Her hands were in my wallet again. My name is Bradley, 33 years old, and I've built a career catching people who believe online theft leaves no fingerprints. For 3 weeks now, Amanda had been repeating the same routine, hovering by the counter, checking through my cards when she thought I wouldn't notice, skimming over bank papers while pretending to tidy up. Most people would call it paranoia. For me, after nearly a decade at Silverline Security, it was instinct. Little behaviors like that are never random, they're warnings. She looked up from my credit cards with that smile she used when caught doing something she shouldn't. Just looking for the grocery receipt from yesterday. You know how I am about budgets. I knew exactly how she was about budgets. We lived in Denver in a house we could barely afford because Amanda needed to keep up appearances with her sister Ashley's crowd. The same crowd that took European vacations every summer while we scraped together money for a weekend in San Diego. Receipts on the fridge, I said, toweling my hair. Same place it always is. She put my wallet back on the counter, but not in the same position. Small detail, but in my line of work, small details keep you employed. I'd been tracking unauthorized financial access for years. Corporate espionage, identity theft, employee fraud. The patterns were always the same. Someone gets access to financial information they shouldn't have. They start small, they get bolder. Amanda kissed my cheek and headed upstairs. I'm going to call my mom about Christmas plans. I watched her go, then checked my wallet. Everything looked normal, but normal didn't mean safe. My debit card was there, credit cards in their usual spots, but she'd been handling them, learning them, memorizing numbers, expiration dates, security codes. The thing about financial fraud is that it always starts with opportunity. Someone leaves their card unattended, writes their PIN down somewhere visible, or trusts the wrong person with access to their accounts. I'd seen marriages destroyed by financial betrayal more times than I cared to count. Husbands who discovered their wives had been funding affairs with joint credit cards, wives who learned their husbands had been gambling away retirement funds. I walked to my home office and pulled up the fraud monitoring software I used for client demonstrations. If someone was planning to access my accounts without permission, they were going to get more than they bargained for. That night, I prepared something special. A bait card connected to a honeypot account with exactly $60,000. The account was monitored by the same systems I used to catch corporate thieves. Every transaction would be tracked, recorded, and flagged. GPS locations, vendor information, timestamps, everything needed to build an airtight case of unauthorized usage. I placed the card in my wallet, exactly where my regular debit card usually sat. 3 days later, the card disappeared. I picked up freelance consulting work to supplement my income. Late nights helping smaller companies implement fraud detection systems. The extra money helped, but it wasn't enough to bridge the gap between our lifestyle and Ashley's. Amanda started working longer hours at the boutique, but her paycheck seemed smaller, not larger. When I asked about it, she said the owner had cut commission rates. Made sense. Retail was struggling. The warning signs had been there for months. Amanda asking about my work schedules when I'd be traveling for client meetings. Questions about bank security protocols. How long it took for unusual transactions to be flagged. She framed it as curiosity about my expertise. But I recognized reconnaissance when I saw it. 3 weeks ago, she'd started the wallet inspections. Always when I was distracted, always with a plausible excuse. Looking for receipts, checking for business cards, making sure I hadn't left anything important in my pockets before laundry. I should have confronted her then. Should have asked direct questions about what she was planning. But part of me needed to know how far she'd go. In my business, assumptions get you fired. Evidence gets convictions. I met Amanda 4 years ago at a coffee shop near the university. She was finishing her marketing degree, working part-time at a boutique downtown. Smart, ambitious, and completely captivated by the idea of financial security. My job fascinated her, the technology, the investigations, the way I could trace digital footprints across international networks. "You're like a detective," she'd said on our 3rd date, but for money. Back then, I thought her interest was charming. She asked detailed questions about my work. Wanted to understand how financial systems operated, how transactions were processed and monitored. I explained fraud detection algorithms, showed her case studies of corporate theft, even demonstrated some of the tracking software I used for client presentations. We married 2 years later. Small ceremony, sensible budget. Amanda had wanted something bigger, but my salary at Silverline Security couldn't support the kind of wedding her sister Ashley had thrown. Ashley married a real estate developer, lived in a house with a pool, drove a car that cost more than I made in 6 months. The comparison started small. Comments about Ashley's vacations, her designer clothes, the restaurants she could afford. Amanda never said anything directly, but the message was clear: we weren't keeping up. The morning the bait card disappeared, Amanda made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, normal routine, normal conversation. She asked about my day, mentioned she might go shopping with Ashley later. Nothing too expensive, she said, kissing me goodbye. You know how I am about our budget. I watched her drive away, then checked the fraud monitoring system. The bait card was already active. The first alert came at 11:15 that morning. Single transaction, $500, luxury boutique in downtown Denver. I was sitting in a client meeting when my phone buzzed with the notification. Standard fraud protocol, any transaction over $300 triggered immediate alerts. I excused myself and checked the transaction details. The card had been used at a store Amanda had mentioned visiting with Ashley. High-end handbags, designer accessories, the kind of place that required appointments for personal shopping sessions. 20 minutes later, another alert. $2,000. Same store, then another, then another. By lunch, she'd spent $8,000 on what the transaction logs showed as luxury goods, handbags, shoes, jewelry. Each purchase tracked with GPS coordinates, vendor identification numbers, and timestamp data accurate to the second. I sat in my car outside the client's office and watched the alerts pile up on my phone. This wasn't impulse shopping. This was systematic, planned spending. She knew exactly what she wanted and where to find it. At 2 p.m., the pattern changed. Travel agency, downtown Denver. $4,000 for airline tickets. The transaction included passenger information, destination data, departure times. Paris, France. First-class seats. Departing tomorrow morning. I drove home and checked our joint accounts. She hadn't touched them. Smart move. Taking money from joint assets would have been harder to explain, easier for me to notice immediately. But the bait card was linked to an account she didn't know existed, with money she assumed I wouldn't miss. That evening, Amanda made dinner like nothing had happened. Talked about her day, mentioned shopping with Ashley, complained about traffic downtown. Perfect performance. If I hadn't been monitoring every transaction in real time, I would never have suspected anything. She packed a suitcase after dinner. Ashley invited me to a spa weekend, she said. Last-minute thing, her treat. That's nice of her. We leave early tomorrow. It'll probably be gone until next week. I helped her carry the suitcase to the car, kissed her goodbye, watched her drive away to meet Ashley for what she told me was a local spa trip. 30 minutes later, another alert. Airport parking, Denver International, long-term lot. Then nothing for several hours. At 5 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Transaction after transaction, all from Paris hotels, restaurants, shopping districts. The bait card was funding a luxury European vacation while I sat in our Denver house, watching every dollar get spent in real time. She thought she was stealing from me. Instead, she was documenting her own crime with digital precision that would make a prosecutor's job effortless. I made coffee and settled in to watch the show. 8 years of fraud investigation had taught me patience. Evidence gathered slowly was evidence that lasted in court. By the end of the week, she'd spent almost $60,000 of what she believed was my money. The international alert started flowing in on day 2 of Amanda's spa weekend. The fraud monitoring system ID connected to the bait card was designed to catch sophisticated financial crimes, and it was performing exactly as intended. Every transaction triggered automatic notifications to multiple databases: my personal monitoring system, the fraud prevention network used by Silverline Security, and international financial crime tracking protocols. By Wednesday morning, Amanda had unknowingly activated security measures she couldn't have imagined. The bait card wasn't just monitored by me, it was flagged by systems that tracked suspicious international spending patterns, unusual transaction volumes, and potential money laundering activities. I received a call Thursday afternoon from Agent Rebecca Torres with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, the same agency I consulted with on corporate fraud cases. Bradley, we've got unusual activity on one of your monitored accounts, she said. International transactions, high volume, pattern suggests potential unauthorized usage. I'm aware of the activity, I told her. It's part of an ongoing personal investigation. Someone close to me has been accessing financial information without authorization. I set up a monitoring system to document the extent of the fraud. There was a long pause. Bradley, are you telling me you're running a sting operation on someone in your own household? I'm documenting unauthorized access to financial accounts. The subject believes they're accessing funds without detection. They're wrong. Agent Torres was quiet for a moment. How much money are we talking about? Approximately $55,000 so far. All tracked, all documented, all connected to accounts the subject was never authorized to access. Jesus, Bradley, do you understand what you've stumbled into? This isn't just personal fraud anymore. International transactions over $50,000 trigger automatic money laundering investigations. Customs enforcement in France has been flagged. Immigration has her passport flagged for enhanced screening on return. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the transaction logs. Amanda's European adventure had evolved from simple theft into an international financial crime investigation. That evening, Amanda called from Paris. Background noise suggested an expensive restaurant, voices speaking French, the clink of wine glasses. Bradley, honey, I'm having the most amazing time, she said. Ashley knows all the best places here. We've been shopping, dining at incredible restaurants. I feel like a completely different person. That's wonderful. When are you coming home? Sunday evening. I can't wait to show you everything I bought. Ashley helped me pick out some gorgeous pieces. I'm sure they're beautiful. Oh, and Bradley, I found this amazing little boutique near the Louvre. I got you something special. After she hung up, I checked the transaction logs. 3 more purchases that evening: $2,000 at a restaurant, $1,500 at a wine shop, $4,000 at what appeared to be a jewelry store. Agent Torres called again Friday morning. Bradley, we need to talk in person. The international scope of this case has expanded beyond personal fraud. Can you come in this afternoon? I drove to the federal building in downtown Denver and met Agent Torres in a conference room filled with documents, transaction printouts, and computer monitors displaying financial tracking data. Your wife's spending pattern has triggered investigations in 3 countries, she said. France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The volume of transactions, the luxury focus, the sudden international travel, it all suggests potential money laundering or organized financial crime. It's not organized crime. It's personal betrayal. I understand that. But the evidence doesn't care about motivation. What matters is the pattern of behavior and the paper trail she's created. Saturday morning brought the revelation I'd been dreading. Agent Torres called with news that changed everything I thought I understood about Amanda's betrayal. Bradley, we've been tracking your wife's transactions across multiple networks, she said. This isn't her first time using stolen financial information for international travel. What do you mean? We found records of similar spending patterns going back 18 months. Different cards, different accounts, but the same signature behavior. Luxury travel, high-end shopping, first-class accommodations. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. That's impossible. She's never traveled internationally without me. According to our records, she's made 4 previous trips to Europe using financial information that wasn't registered to her name. London, Milan, Barcelona, and Amsterdam. Always first-class flights, always luxury accommodations, always funded through accounts she shouldn't have had access to. The room felt like it was spinning. Whose accounts? We're still investigating, but preliminary evidence suggests she's been accessing financial information from multiple sources: credit cards belonging to her employer, former roommates, even family members. I walked to my home office and pulled up my own financial records. If Amanda had been running financial scams for over a year, there should be traces I could find. Unexplained income, sudden improvements in her lifestyle, discrepancies between her reported earnings and her spending patterns. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight. Amanda's paychecks from the boutique had been consistent, but her personal spending had increased dramatically. Designer clothes she claimed were gifts from Ashley. Expensive dinners she said Ashley paid for. Jewelry and accessories that appeared without explanation. I called Ashley directly. "Bradley, is everything okay?" She asked. "I need to ask you about Amanda's trips, the spa weekends, the shopping excursions. How many of those have you actually been on together?" Long pause. "Bradley, I haven't been on a trip with Amanda in over 2 years. We had coffee last month, but that's about it." "Why?" The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Amanda had been using Ashley as cover for her European trips. Every spa weekend with Ashley had been a solo journey funded by stolen money. Every expensive dinner supposedly paid for by Ashley had been charged to someone else's credit card. Agent Torres called back that afternoon with more details. "We've identified at least 7 different accounts she's accessed without authorization," she said. "Her employer's corporate credit card, her sister's personal accounts, credit cards belonging to former co-workers. The pattern suggests she's been systematically gathering financial information and using it to fund a luxury lifestyle. How did she get access to all these accounts? We're still investigating, but it appears she's been photographing cards, memorizing numbers, and even using her position at the boutique to access customer payment information." The boutique. Amanda's part-time job at an upscale clothing store where wealthy customers regularly used credit cards for expensive purchases. She'd been in a perfect position to gather financial information from unsuspecting victims. That evening, I went through Amanda's belongings methodically. Hidden in her jewelry box, I found a small notebook filled with credit card numbers, expiration dates, and security codes. Names I didn't recognize. Account information for cards that didn't belong to her. At the bottom of the notebook, written in Amanda's handwriting, was a list of European cities with dates and transaction amounts, a criminal ledger documenting years of theft. My phone rang. Amanda calling from Paris. "Bradley, I'll be home tomorrow evening. I can't wait to see you." "I can't wait to see you, too," I said. What I didn't tell her was that federal agents would be waiting at customs when her flight landed. Sunday morning, Agent Torres called with final coordination details. Amanda's flight was scheduled to land at Denver International at 6:30 p.m. Customs and Border Protection had been briefed on the investigation. Immigration officials were prepared for enhanced screening procedures. "When she lands, she'll go through normal passport control first," Agent Torres explained. "Then she'll be directed to secondary inspection for routine customs screening. That's when we'll begin questioning about the source of funds for her purchases. What happens if she tries to claim I authorized the spending? We'll verify that story with you directly. But Bradley, the evidence we've gathered suggests this goes far beyond unauthorized use of your accounts. She's been running a sophisticated financial fraud operation for over a year." I spent the day preparing for Amanda's return, cleaned the house, organized the evidence ID gathered, reviewed the transaction logs one final time. By evening, the bait card showed total spending of $59,700. Every purchase documented, every transaction tracked, every dollar creating another piece of evidence for federal prosecutors. At 6:15, I received a text from Amanda. "Just landed. Can't wait to show you everything." 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Agent Torres. She's in secondary inspection now. Customs found over $40,000 worth of luxury goods in her luggage, designer handbags, jewelry, expensive clothing." When asked about the source of funds, she claimed her husband had given her permission to use his credit card for the trip. "And you told them?" "We're verifying her story now." "Are you prepared to make a statement regarding authorization for these purchases?" "I never authorized any spending. She accessed financial information without permission and used it to fund international travel and luxury purchases. That's what we expected." "Bradley, you should know she's also carrying a second set of credit cards, names and account numbers that don't match any cards registered to your household. The stolen card information from her notebook." Even on her return flight, Amanda had been carrying evidence of her crimes. At 7:45, Agent Torres called again. "She's been arrested on charges of credit card fraud, identity theft, and international money laundering. The evidence from your monitoring system combined with the stolen cards she was carrying gives us a solid federal case." At 8:30, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Bradley, this is Amanda. I'm allowed one phone call. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Can you come to the airport and clear this up?" "What kind of misunderstanding?" "They think I stole money for the trip. I told them you gave me permission to use your card. Just tell them it was authorized and we can go home. I looked at the transaction logs on my computer screen. $59,700 in unauthorized charges. Years of stolen financial information. A notebook full of credit card numbers belonging to other people. Amanda, I never gave you permission to use any of my accounts. Silence on the line. Bradley, please. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. Save the explanation for your lawyer. I hung up and turned off my phone. The house felt quiet for the first time in years. The arraignment was scheduled for Tuesday morning at the federal courthouse in downtown Denver. I sat in the gallery as Amanda was brought in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed behind her back. The woman who had spent $60,000 on designer goods in Paris looked smaller now, diminished by the reality of federal criminal charges. Assistant United States Attorney Michael Garrett read the charges aloud: credit card fraud, identity theft, international money laundering, conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Each charge carried potential prison sentences measured in years, not months. Your Honor, Attorney Garrett said, the defendant engaged in a sophisticated criminal enterprise spanning over 18 months. She systematically accessed financial information belonging to multiple victims, used that information to fund luxury international travel, and attempted to conceal her crimes through elaborate deception. Amanda's court-appointed attorney requested bail, arguing that she was a first-time offender with ties to the community. Attorney Garrett responded by presenting evidence of the international scope of her crimes, the sophisticated methods she used, and the substantial financial losses to multiple victims. The defendant poses a significant flight risk, he argued. She has demonstrated a pattern of international travel funded by stolen money. She has shown expertise in accessing and exploiting financial systems, and the evidence suggests she was planning additional crimes at the time of her arrest. Judge Patricia Coleman reviewed the evidence, including the notebook of stolen credit card information found in Amanda's possession and the detailed transaction logs from my monitoring system. The court finds that the defendant poses both a flight risk and a danger to the community, Judge Coleman ruled. The systematic nature of these crimes, the international scope, and the sophisticated methods employed suggest a high likelihood of continued criminal activity if released. Bail is denied. Amanda looked back at me as she was led away. I didn't wave. Outside the courthouse, Agent Torres handed me a folder containing financial recovery information. The $60,000 from your Bait account will be returned within 30 days, she said. As for the other victims, we're working with international law enforcement to trace and recover stolen funds. I drove home to an empty house and started making phone calls to change every password, every account number, every piece of financial information Amanda had ever seen. 3 months later, Amanda pleaded guilty to federal financial crimes charges. The evidence was overwhelming: the transaction logs from my monitoring system, the notebook of stolen credit cards, testimony from other victims who had unknowingly funded her European adventures. She received a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Restitution was set at over $400,000, representing the total amount stolen from all victims over 18 months of criminal activity. The boutique where she worked was also investigated. Owner Margaret Phillips discovered that Amanda had been systematically photographing customer credit cards during transactions, using her position to gather financial information from wealthy clients. 3 additional victims came forward, all customers who had shopped at the store and later discovered unauthorized charges on their accounts. Ashley called me after the sentencing hearing. "Bradley, I had no idea what she was doing," she said. "All those times she said we were traveling together, she was lying to both of us. I know you weren't the only one she deceived. Is there anything I can do? Just remember that some people aren't who they pretend to be." I moved out of the Denver house 6 months later. Too many memories, too many reminders of the life I'd built with someone who had been lying from the beginning. I took a new position with a cybersecurity firm in Phoenix specializing in financial fraud prevention. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same skills that had made me good at catching corporate thieves had been essential for documenting my wife's crimes. The bait card that was meant to catch a suspicious spouse had exposed an international criminal operation. Sometimes the person closest to you is the one you know the least. 8 years of marriage, and I'd been living with a stranger who saw me as nothing more than another source of money to steal. So, that was my story. But now I want to ask you. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have confronted Amanda the moment you noticed the signs, or would you have waited, like I did, to gather undeniable proof? And most importantly, if the person you trust the most suddenly turned into the person who betrayed you the deepest, could you forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Tell me in the comments, because maybe the next betrayal doesn't come from a stranger, but from the person sitting right beside you.